Some unusual things happening in the southeast that were not expected before the winter season started. Is there a better chance of spring flooding than we had previously been advertising? Watch the February Water Resources Outlook to find some of these answers. Let's start with Jeff, who will look at past precipitation and the climatology across the southeast.
Okay, thanks, Todd. So let's go back and see what kind of rainfall we have seen in the last 30 days. And as many of you are aware, we have had some decent rain events across the southeast since late January. About 4 to 5 rain events have come across the region since late January, and after a relatively dry early January, recent rains have brought precipitation surpluses to many locations, especially in those red colors there, indicating 5+ inches over the last 30 days. Most of the region, as you can see, has seen at least a couple of inches since late January. Our dry spot has been far south Florida, where little to no rain is falling, putting Miami around 2 inches below normal for the year. Speaking of normal, how has the last 30 days compared? Well, where we saw those reds is where we are seeing the greens, blues, and purples on this map, meaning surpluses of an inch or more. Big surpluses of 5+ inches down there in the Florida Panhandle with the recent storm event. This is also where we saw river flooding with that event. So how have stream flows fared? Well, many green dots there on the map, and that means most streams are running about normal for this time of year. Some of the northern headwaters are running actually above normal there across Georgia and the Carolinas and the upper Alabama River Basin. Parts of Florida, including the Suwannee River Basin, also running above normal. This is a big change from our last water resources outlook when we saw mainly red dots or below normal stream flows. So the recent rains have pushed stream flows back to normal, which is typical and can be a good thing this time of year. And good things, especially for our reservoirs, of which many needed some water and were running shy of their target pools last month, but now several are near their guide curves. Let's take a look at North Carolina first, and we see Kerr Scott, Falls, and Lake Norman all running at or above guide curve. Moving south into South Carolina, we see the Savannah Reservoir Project pools all coming up from being several feet below guide curve to now being only a couple of feet below, which is a good thing heading into the warmer months. And into Georgia, Lake Lanier now above guide curve, as well as most of the others there across Georgia. And over into Alabama, many of the lakes near or above guide curve. We see Lewis Smith nearly 3 feet above guide curve at this time. And as you can imagine, with the latest drought monitor here, we see drought decreasing with just a few areas remaining in abnormally dry conditions and or moderate drought, with an overall trend toward decreasing drought coverage and intensity for the southeast. The only exception is South Florida, where we'll have to watch that closely, Todd.
We're beginning the period with high pressure over the area and a front to our west. A cold front will push eastward during the short-term period, bringing precipitation to the southeast this weekend. The front will stall out and become stationary during the early portion of the midterm period, then lift northward as a warm front as another system moves in. The 7-day precipitation forecast shows most of the southeast U.S. receiving contributions from this active pattern. Florida Peninsula is not expected to receive as much rain as the rest of the area, which is pretty typical for this time of year. A portion of this rainfall from the 7-day forecast is from the day 6-7 time frame, about a week out, so these forecast amounts will continue to be refined as we get into next week. The long-term outlook calls for above normal precipitation through the northern portion of the area, which is mainly based on where the models are calling for precipitation early in the period. As always, we need to be careful reading into the models this far out.
We continue to warm in the Pacific and creep out of our weak La Niña that we've been experiencing since late summer. Neutral conditions will likely prevail as we exit winter and move into spring. So our weather through at least the summer will be affected by other phenomena that don't include El Niño and La Niña. We will bring this discussion back if we start to see a La Niña or El Niño begin to develop again. The Climate Prediction Center issued their monthly and seasonal forecast last week, and March is looking wetter than we had expected when we did our WRO last fall. We were expecting to have a flood season that had less flooding than usual across the southeast. Well, that has changed somewhat, in part due to the negative Pacific North American Arctic Oscillation, or PNA. With La Nina weak and weakening and a negative PNA, our chances for above normal precipitation increase across the southeast. Temperatures will likely stay near normal. This would increase our chances for flooding in the southeast, but also decrease our chances of continuing the drought or sliding into a more deep drought. Rain in the past month has made a huge difference in the reservoirs that had been lagging behind in filling up this winter, mostly Lake Lanier and Lake Hartwell, both in North and Georgia. As Jeff showed, our reservoirs are at or near the guide curve for February 22nd. This is good news as we move into early spring from a drought standpoint, a little more precarious from a potential flood position. On to the seasonal forecast, which resembles the more traditional weak La Nina outlook, with dryness in Florida, transitioning to wet as we approach the Tennessee Valley towards the mid-Atlantic. That area of equal chances could truly go either way for the March-April time frame, so those with water interest need to pay a little closer attention to the weather in the coming weeks, as a lot of uncertainty is still in the forecast. Once we get to summer, the only forecast anomaly is the chances for above normal precipitation in Virginia and central and eastern North Carolina. By then, there should be neutral ENSO conditions. Otherwise, nothing in the model output to push forecast for the rest of the southeast to either above or below normal precipitation. So, our spring flood outlook for Virginia and the Carolinas. Our chances for flooding have increased to more normal amounts of flooding for this time of year. March is typically our most active flooding month of the year, and based on the forecast right now, it will likely be active, which means we will likely see some flooding in this area, but not above what we would have for an average this time of year. Our chances for drought have decreased a great deal. However, our confidence is not as high as it was last month because of all the variables coming into play. Everything is pointing towards at least an average flooding season in Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, and the Florida Panhandle. With recent rainfall, full reservoirs, better than normal chances for above rainfall, drought should be diminishing, and March could be an active flooding month. The opposite is true down in Central and South Florida. After a very active summer and hurricane season, this has been a pretty dry season. And even though Jeff showed stream flows being near normal over most of the area, they are coming down, and we could be looking at some drought conditions being introduced across the state, which we have seen a little bit of in South Florida. However, we would look to the May timeframe for the wet season to pick up to improve conditions in those areas. But like the other two areas, our confidence is not high for the forecast, but probably a little better than the rest of the southeast. And so the bottom line, in the short term, it looks like we'll remain in an active rainfall pattern. As we've seen over the last 30 days, we've had pretty good rain over most of the southeast. And so because we've been active and we look to be active, flooding is more likely. As for the long term, March looks like it could also be rainy. There's still some uncertainty in the forecast, a lot of things going on right now, so make sure and stay tuned to us between now and our next Water Resources Outlook, which we plan to record on March 15th, 2018. Please contact us if you have any questions or need anything else from the Southeast RFC. Thank you.